Wildlife has no intentions and makes no exceptions. For it, a person is just a movement in space, a sound or a smell that can be perceived as a threat or prey. Most tragedies are not caused by animal aggression, but by mistakes, late decisions, or a false sense of control. This video features 7 stories about encounters with wildlife that ended in death or survival. In the early morning hours of August 22, 2017, 25-year-old Michael Reynolds went into the water off the coast of California alone. It was a weekday, the beach was still almost empty, and the ocean looked calm and predictable. Michael Reynolds had been surfing for several years, knew this stretch of coastline well, and had trained here many times in the early morning hours. According to his friends, he did not consider himself an extreme, but he was confident in his own experience and rarely paid attention to warnings if the conditions seemed safe. That morning, there was no strong wind, the waves were forming smoothly, and the water looked clear. Michael Reynolds paddled out about 50 meters from the shore and lay down on his board, waiting for the right wave. At some point, he felt a sharp jolt from below, as if something heavy had hit the board. At first, he thought it was an underwater current or a piece of debris, but almost immediately, the board rose sharply and his body lost its balance. A dark silhouette appeared under the surface of the water and instantly disappeared into the depths. People on the shore later testified that for a brief moment, they saw a fin cutting through the water. The great white shark struck the board from below, not taking it completely, but damaging the edge and catching the surfer's leg. Michael Reynolds fell into the water and screamed in pain. He felt a sharp pressure and heat that quickly spread around him. The shark never returned. Experts later explained that the animal made a so-called test strike, mistaking the silhouette of the board for prey, and lost interest after contact. Realizing that he was losing blood, Michael Reynolds began to instinctively paddle to the shore, trying not to panic. Several surfers who were closer to the beach noticed the situation and swam towards him. They helped him to keep him on the board and quickly reached the shore. When Michael Reynolds was on the sand, he was in a state of severe shock, but remained conscious. The medics who arrived a few minutes later recorded deep lacerations to his leg and significant blood loss. He was immediately taken to the hospital, where he underwent an emergency operation. Doctors noted that a few more minutes in the water could have been fatal. The incident was officially classified as unprovoked contact with a wild animal. The shark did not pursue the man and did not show repeated aggression. Experts emphasized that morning hours, lone surfers, and lighting conditions significantly increase the risk of such encounters. For Michael Reynolds, this event was a clear realization that even the familiar coast remains part of a wild ecosystem where humans never cease to be vulnerable. On the morning of July 18, 2013, 32-year-old Jason Keller arrived at a national park in Wyoming with a tour group. It was his first trip to such an area, and according to the guide, he was calm, took a lot of pictures, and showed no fear of wildlife. During the introductory briefing, the rangers emphasized several times that it was forbidden to approach bison closer than 25 meters, explaining that these animals look slow and apathetic, but are capable of sharp attacks and speeds comparable to a car in a city. Jason Keller listened, nodding, but it would later become apparent that he took these warnings as a formality. Around 11 o'clock, the group stopped near an open meadow where several bison were grazing. The animals stood motionless, slowly chewing the grass and not paying attention to the people. The tourists took photos from a safe distance, following the rangers' recommendations. At this point, Jason Keller stepped aside, explaining that he wanted to take a shot without other people in the frame. He began to gradually close the distance, stopping every few steps and assessing the animal's reaction. The bison stood sideways to him and showed no signs of concern. When the distance was reduced to a few meters, Jason Keller picked up his phone. It was at this point that the bison turned its head sharply. According to eyewitnesses, further events lasted no more than a few seconds. The animal made a short but extremely fast lunge forward and hit the man with its body. Jason Keller fell to the ground and never got up. The bison did not chase him, trample on him, or show any further aggression. It made one more sharp head movement, after which the animal moved away a few meters and began to graze again as if nothing had happened. The guide immediately called the emergency services. People shouted and tried to help. At first glance, there were almost no visible wounds, which gave the false impression that the injuries were not critical. However, within a few minutes, Jason Keller's condition deteriorated sharply, and he began to lose consciousness. Rangers arrived, recorded signs of severe internal injuries, and called a medical helicopter. During transportation, Jason Keller's heart stopped. Resuscitation measures were unsuccessful. The official cause of death was massive internal injuries caused by a large wild animal. The bison was not recognized as aggressive and did not exhibit atypical behavior. The incident was classified as a result of a violation of safety rules by a tourist. In the final report, the rangers noted that such incidents occur regularly and almost always have one thing in common. A person decides that the rules exist for someone else, but not for him or her. In the evening of December 14, 2015, 41-year-old Thomas Grayson went on a solo hunt in a remote area of Alaska, about 40 kilometers from the nearest settlement. He had experience in the wilderness, had traveled to the region several times before, and considered the route relatively safe even in winter. According to his relatives, Thomas Grayson did not plan a long hike, just one night in the woods and returning the next day. He brought a rifle, minimal food, a flashlight, warm clothes, and a tent, but deliberately refused to use a satellite beacon, explaining that he was not going to stray far from the familiar area. The weather deteriorated rapidly that day. The temperature dropped below -20 degrees. The wind increased, and light snow began to fall, which completely covered the tracks on the ground in a few hours. When Thomas Grayson did not get in touch the next morning, it did not cause immediate alarm at first, as similar delays had occurred before. It was only in the late afternoon, when he did not return to the car, that his family contacted the rescue services. Due to difficult weather conditions, the active phase of the search began only the next day. Thomas Grayson's camp was found relatively quickly. The tent was between the trees, partially covered with snow, with personal belongings inside, and no signs of struggle or haste. However, the hunter himself was not found nearby. Tracks in the snow led from the camp deeper into the forest, but they were fuzzy and intermittent, as if the person had moved slowly, stopping or losing balance. After about a few hundred meters, the search team came across an area of trampled snow and broken branches. It was there that the body of Thomas Grayson was found. A forensic examination later revealed numerous bites and lacerations consistent with an attack by several animals. The tracks around the area clearly indicated the presence of a wolf pack. Experts concluded that Thomas Grayson was probably weakened by hypothermia and physical exhaustion, possibly lost his bearings in the dark, and wandered away from the camp to find better protection from the wind or another route. In this state, he no longer looked like a threat and became an easy target. Wolves rarely attack healthy adults, but during periods of harsh winter, lack of food, and when the victim is obviously weak, the risk increases significantly. There were no signs that Thomas Grayson had tried to use the gun, as it remained in the tent. It is likely that the attack was sudden and occurred in conditions of limited visibility. The official cause of death was a combination of severe hypothermia and injuries sustained as a result of an attack by wild animals. This case was the subject of a separate analysis for local services, which once again emphasized the danger of going out into the wilderness alone in winter without emergency communications. The rangers emphasized that nature itself did not show abnormal aggression. The tragedy was the result of a combination of weather conditions, physical exhaustion, and the decision to be alone in an environment where humans are not the dominant species, but only a temporary and vulnerable element. The incident occurred on May 9, 2019, in one of Utah's remote canyons, where the official hiking trail gradually narrows and turns into a rocky passage between high rock walls. Sarah Mitchell, 28, came to the region with 2 friends, planning a day hike without difficult sections. She was not a professional hiker, but she had basic hiking experience, had visited the canyons many times, and thought the route was safe. At the beginning of the journey, the group stayed together, but eventually stretched out. Everyone walked at their own pace, stopping for photos and a short rest. According to the people in front of her, Sarah Mitchell was about a few minutes behind, which didn't seem like a problem in the open countryside. The weather was stable, the sky was clear, there was no heat or strong winds, and there was nothing to indicate any possible danger. About a kilometer from the beginning of the route, the trail narrowed sharply, and on both sides there were stone ledges that limited the view and created deep shadows even during the day. These are the kinds of areas that mountain lions often use for observation, remaining invisible due to the height and terrain. Sarah Mitchell moved slowly, looking down at her feet to avoid slipping on small stones. She did not hear the first signal of danger right away. The dry sound of shifting rocks behind her made her stop and turn around. At a distance of about 20 meters, partially hidden by the shadow of a rock, stood a mountain lion. The animal did not growl or show any open aggression. It just stared, remaining motionless. Sarah Mitchell froze. She remembered the general guidelines she had once read. Don't run, don't turn your back, maintain eye contact, and try to look bigger. She slowly raised her arms and took a few cautious steps back. The mountain lion followed. He didn't run or shorten the distance abruptly, but he moved steadily behind her, keeping about the same distance. For several minutes, they moved along a narrow path. The man retreated, the animal followed him, not looking away. According to the experts, this behavior indicates that the predator is assessing the victim when it has not yet made a final decision to attack. The terrain made it difficult for Sarah Mitchell to move. There were small, loose stones under her feet that could easily move. At one of the bends in the trail, she lost her balance and fell on her side. This moment was decisive. The fall abruptly changed the body's position from upright to vulnerable and demonstrated its weakness. The mountain lion instantly closed the distance. The attack was quick and lasted a few seconds. According to the results of the forensic examination, the main injuries were caused by bites in the neck and shoulder area, which is consistent with the typical behavior of a predator. After the attack, the animal abruptly retreated, climbed up the slope, and disappeared among the rocks. When Sarah Mitchell's friends returned to the trail, not seeing her on the path, they began to call out and quickly examine the area. The body was found about 15 minutes after the attack. Rescuers and paramedics were called immediately, but the injuries were incompatible with life. The services temporarily closed the route and began searching for the animal. The mountain lion was identified by its tracks and removed from the area, having been recognized as potentially dangerous. The official report stated that the animal was not sick and did not show atypical aggression before the incident. The tragedy was caused by a combination of several factors: lagging behind the group, a narrow section of the canyon, sudden contact, and loss of balance. Experts emphasized that mountain lions rarely attack adults, but in isolated environments and when signs of weakness appear, the risk increases instantly. This case was one of the few fatalities in the region in recent decades and clearly showed that even basic compliance with the rules does not guarantee safety when a person is alone in the territory of a predator. The incident occurred on January 11, 2016, in the southern part of Florida, in a wetland that was not part of the official territory of the national park, but had been used by locals for fishing for many years. Robert Lawson, 46, arrived there early in the morning, before sunrise. He lived nearby and considered this place to be very familiar. According to relatives and friends, Robert Lawson had spent time in the swamps since childhood, had fished there many times, and was convinced that he knew all the features of the area. He had heard warnings about alligators more than once, but he took them as general recommendations, believing that the real danger was exaggerated. In those days, the water level was higher than usual due to prolonged rains. The soil along the canals was soaked, and the water was muddy. Robert Lawson settled down on a narrow bank where the soil looked dense, set up his gear, and started fishing, standing a few steps away from the water. Other fishermen were further along the canal and did not pay much attention to him. According to eyewitnesses, Robert Lawson came closer to the edge several times, leaning over the water, trying to see the movement of the fish under the surface. At about 7 o'clock in the morning, he took a step to the side to retrieve his gear, and at that moment, he slipped. According to one version, the wet soil shifted under his foot, while another version is that he slipped when he was trying to keep his balance on the slippery bank. The fall was not sharp, but Robert Lawson found himself in water almost to his waist, creating a loud splash. It was this sound and movement that became decisive. Alligators are not guided by sight, but by vibrations and sharp fluctuations in the water. According to biologists, a large alligator was nearby, remaining completely invisible. The reaction was instantaneous. Witnesses heard a short scream and saw the water surface spin sharply. The alligator grabbed Robert Lawson by the lower part of his body and pulled him sharply into the canal. He tried to hold on to the bank, but the slippery ground gave him no support. It all happened in a matter of seconds. The other fishermen rushed to the edge of the canal, but they could no longer see the man, only the rapidly fading waves. They immediately called the emergency services. The search operation lasted several hours and was complicated by muddy water and dense vegetation. Robert Lawson's body was found downstream. A forensic examination determined that death occurred rapidly as a result of a combination of drowning and critical injuries, typical of a large reptile attack. The alligator involved in the incident was later identified and removed from the area. The Wildlife Service report stated that the animal was behaving in a typical manner for its species and was not provoked on purpose. The tragedy was caused by a combination of several factors: high water levels, slippery shore, proximity to the canal, and underestimation of the risk. Experts emphasized that alligators usually avoid contact with people while they are on land, but falling into the water instantly changes the situation. The incident became one of the most discussed in the region that year and served as another reminder to local residents that familiarity with the area does not reduce the danger. Swamps remain an environment where people do not control the rules, and where even a short loss of balance can have irreversible consequences. The incident occurred on September 3, 2018, at a popular hiking area in Yosemite, where the trail passes through an open area with low vegetation. Mark Sullivan, 34, and his wife, Elizabeth Sullivan, 32, came to the park for a few days, planning to take a regular walk without difficult routes. They were not experienced hikers, but they followed standard rules and did not seek risk. In the morning, the weather was clear. There were many people on the trail, and there were warnings at the entrance about wild animals and the need to keep a distance. Around noon, the couple, along with other hikers, approached an area where a bison was standing on the trail. The animal looked calm and did not show aggression, so people stopped, expecting it to move away. However, as time went on, the crowd behind the bison began to thicken, with voices and attempts to go around it, which created a sense of pressure for the animal. Mark Sullivan suggested moving a little to the side to avoid being in the center of the crowd. Together with Elizabeth Sullivan, they carefully moved to the edge of the trail, where the ground was uneven and the space was limited. At that moment, someone behind them made a sudden movement. The bison reacted instantly, lunged forward, and hit Elizabeth Sullivan with its body, knocking her down. The attack lasted a few seconds and had no continuation. The bison immediately stopped and moved away. Mark Sullivan rushed to his wife's side, but her condition was rapidly deteriorating. Despite the rapid arrival of rangers and medics, Elizabeth Sullivan died of internal injuries sustained during the impact and fall. The report noted that the bison did not act aggressively on purpose, and the incident was the result of crowding in a narrow place, noise, and distance violations. This case showed that even without a direct provocation, the presence of a person in the wrong place can trigger a chain of events that ends in death. The incident occurred on February 17, 2020, in a mountainous area of Colorado, near a popular ski resort, where official trails border on wooded areas of wilderness. Daniel Harper, 29, had come there alone, planning an evening ski trip before the lifts closed. He was a confident intermediate skier, not the first time he had skied in the area, and he knew that wildlife activity near the slopes increased after sunset. That day, however, Daniel Harper decided to make one more run, even though the dusk was already beginning to gather and the temperature was dropping rapidly. There were almost no people left on the track. The staff was preparing to end the day, and it was getting noticeably quieter. During the descent, Daniel Harper lost his balance on an icy section, fell, and hit his foot badly. He managed to get up, but the pain severely limited his movement, and it became clear that it would be difficult to get down on his own. His phone was in his jacket pocket, but the signal in that area was unstable. Daniel Harper tried to move slowly, leaning on his skis, but after a few minutes he realized that he was quickly losing strength due to the cold and pain. That's when he heard a howl. At first, the sound was distant and muffled, but gradually became clearer. Several coyotes appeared from the forest. They did not rush forward and did not approach abruptly, keeping at a distance, moving parallel to the highway. According to experts, this behavior is typical of animals that assess the situation and wait for a potential victim to weaken. Daniel Harper tried to shout and wave his ski poles, but the coyotes did not retreat, only stopped and moved on again. The temperature continued to drop, the light was fading fast, and Daniel Harper's strength was leaving him faster and faster. He sat down on the snow, hoping to rest for a few minutes and gather his strength, but this decision was fatal. The hypothermia started to take effect much faster than he expected. When rescuers found his body later, the tracks around him showed that the coyotes had been around for a long time, without attacking him immediately. A forensic examination determined that Daniel Harper died from a combination of hypothermia and loss of mobility, and that the bites on his body appeared after he lost consciousness. The official report emphasized that the coyotes did not show atypical aggression and did not perceive the man as prey as long as he remained active. The tragedy was the result of trauma, a delayed decision, and being alone at a time when the environment was no longer under control. This case was another confirmation that wildlife does not attack for no reason, but always waits for a person to make a mistake or lose strength. In these stories, wildlife did not act intentionally. The tragedies were the result of people's decisions and loss of control in an environment where other rules apply. Distance, caution, and respect for nature are often the only boundary between a safe return and a fatal ending. If the format is close to you, subscribe to the channel and like it.